Pepper Young's Family. Pepper Young's Family is the true-to-life story of your friends, the Youngs. We'll be with them in just a moment after this message. Late afternoon in Chicago. Just before closing time, Curt Bradley stopped by Miss Wayne's desk to tell her that Sam Young had telephoned long distance last night with welcome news, that he was in a position to buy the house on Union Street, and he had asked Curt to get word to Mr. Phillips, the owner, right away. Now as Curt and Nancy Wayne stroll down Michigan Boulevard together, Curt is in an expansive mood, pleased with his errand, with the weather, with himself, and with his companion. He's been seeing a lot of Nancy in the past few weeks. It all started when Curt invited her out to dinner and Nancy countered with a home-cooked meal. Now he smiles down at her, thinking how particularly attractive some women look in a trim, tailored suit. Funny how pleasant a little thing like a walk can become with a good companion along. Aloud, he says casually,
"Sure you don't mind going over to Mr. Phillips' office with me, Nancy? It won't take long."
Oh, no, I don't mind a bit. Feels good to walk after sitting still all day.
It's a grand day, isn't it? It's going to be a beautiful night.
The harvest moon rising high, light, and handsome.
Well, anyway, after I get through transacting my business with Mr. Phillips, or rather Mr. Young's business, we'll go someplace and have a bite to eat.
We'll go back to my apartment where a chicken is reposing in my icebox waiting to be broiled. That's what we'll do.
Oh, now look here, you can't do a thing like that.
I can't broil a chicken, you watch.
Oh, sure. You can broil the best gall-darn chicken I ever put in my mouth. Even Mary Young wouldn't broil them any better.
Sometime I'd like to meet Mary Young, who is forever being held up to me as a sort of demigoddess.
Well, I want you to. You know, she's the finest woman I ever met in my life. She's everything a woman ought to be. I'm going to take you out to Elmwood someday and introduce you to her.
I'd like to see Elmwood.
Oh, it's a swell place. And I sure miss it.
Do you?
Yeah? Well, that is, I did miss it until you took pity on me.
We have had good times together, haven't we?
Well, that takes all prizes for understatement. We've had swell times. And the best of them have been when I've sat down at your table and let you cook dinner for me.
I told you I love to cook.
Well, that doesn't mean you want to do it every night. I ought to be allowed to buy you a dinner once in a while.
All right, you can buy me a dinner next week, Curt.
Okay, I'll hold you to that. Philip's office is on the ground floor. Come on.
No, I think I better wait outside.
Well, no, why should you? This isn't a private matter. Besides, you might get away from me.
No, I won't.
Well, maybe not, but I'm not taking any chances.
Oh, well, I guess I'll have to go with you if you're going to take my arm like this.
Yes, you'll have to go with me. I telephoned Phillips I was coming, so he'd wait for me.
Is this Mr. Bradley?
Yes, and you're Mr. Phillips?
Hell, although I lived in Elmwood quite a while, I don't think I ever had the pleasure of meeting you, Mr. Bradley. Or Mrs. Bradley either.
Well, this isn't Mrs. Bradley. This is Miss Wayne.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought...
I've come to see you on Mr. Young's behalf, Mr. Phillips. I believe at last he's in a position to buy your house.
Oh, is that so? Well, now, that's fine. I certainly want to get rid of it, and I don't know anybody I'd rather sell it to than Mr. Young.
Good. Then we ought to be able to get together. It's only a question of terms.
Why, I'd almost make any terms so that Mr. Young could keep the house. I know how he feels about it and how Mrs. Young feels about it, too.
Well, as I understand it, what Mr. Young would like to do is to make a small down payment and pay the rest in lieu of rent.
You don't suppose he could pay, say, $5,000?
Well, I don't think so, Mr. Phillips. But if you'll give me authority to say that you'll accept half of that, I'll tell him you'd like him to make a little more if he can.
Well, all right. If you'll do that, it's a deal. Walters knows what I'm holding out for. I assume he and Mr. Young have talked terms.
Oh, yes, of course I have. Just a question of my seeing you here in Chicago and getting you to agree to accept a down payment and take the rest of the purchase price in lieu of rent.
Well, that suits me, Mr. Bradley. And I don't mind telling you that I'm very glad to get rid of that property because, well, I don't expect to go back to Elmwood again.
Oh?
Mrs. Phillips didn't like it there. It was a little too quiet for her.
Well, it's quiet, all right. But there are those of us who like it quiet.
I understand you got a nice place there, Mr. Bradley. Isn't up on the Lake Drive? What are you doing with it while you're away? Renting it?
No, I just shut it up temporarily.
Haven't you got a camp someplace, too? Seems to me I heard about one.
Yes, I've got a camp up on Lake Beauregard.
But you're settled here in Chicago now, aren't you?
Yes, I am. But I'd like to be back in Elmwood.
Well, that's where you and I part company. I like the hurry and bustle of a big city like Chicago. How about you, Miss Wayne?
Oh, I like the country, too, Mr. Phillips. Always have. Wish I never had to see a city again.
Well, I won't take up any more of your time, Mr. Phillips. I'll call Mr. Young tonight and tell him you'll accept his terms.
And give him my regards, too, will you?
I certainly will.
We'll be back with the Youngs in a moment after this message.
I never knew you liked the country, Nancy.
Oh, you never asked me.
That's right. I never did.
I didn't know you were a man of property, Curt. Houses here, there, all over the map.
Oh, yes. Vast estates. Well, I can make the same reply. You never asked me.
Touche. Your camp on Lake, whatever it's called.
Yeah, Beauregard.
Yeah, it sounds like a British general.
Yes, it does.
Sounds nice, too.
Mm-hmm.
Will you show me the camp when I come to Elmwood?
Well, you bet your life I will. Say, maybe we can run back there some weekend and the Youngs can put you up. And I'll stay at my house.
That's rather imposing on Mrs. Young, isn't it?
Nonsense. Mary Young loves company. She's always putting somebody up at her house. She'd be glad to do it for a friend of mine. Particularly if I told her how good you've been to me since I've been in Chicago.
Had you been living alone in your house? I mean, you and your son for a long time before you came to Chicago?
Yes, for a good many years now. Or don't you remember I told you that my wife and I were divorced years ago?
Yes, I remember. What became of her?
Well, she's married to somebody else now, an Englishman. I was very much in love with her when I married her.
Now, I can't imagine you marrying unless you were very much in love.
Yes, I was terribly in love with her. But I was also very young and very ambitious. At that time, I really thought I was ambitious for her. I thought I wanted to make a pile of money so as I could give her everything in the world she wanted. Well, I've since come to believe that I was ambitious mostly for myself.
And you feel that you neglected her?
Yes, I mean just that. I was stupid. A young man married to an attractive girl who didn't want to sit home night after night alone. Well, I've got only myself to blame for what happened. She finally got sick of it. Somebody else came along who gave her a great deal more attention than I did. And so she ran away with him.
And left her baby?
Yes.
How dreadful, I mean.
Yes. Yes, those things are pretty dreadful at the time. They do get you down. I loved her so much, and I didn't understand why she'd done it.
How could she leave a baby?
Oh, I don't know, except that the thought may have crossed her mind that she wanted to leave something for me. She wouldn't be robbing me of everything if I still had Biff to look after.
Didn't she ever want to see him again?
Oh, yes, of course she did. But I had the custody of him and kept them apart until about 3 years ago when she came over from England and met her son again.
And you let her? I mean, after all that time?
Well, she had a right to see him, you know. I couldn't stop that. But I might have tried to if I'd known what it was she wanted.
She wanted him to come and live with her.
How'd you know that?
How could she want anything else if she saw her son again?
Well, Biff chose between us then. It was a hard decision for him to make. She's still a fascinating woman.
You saw her again, too?
Yes, I saw her.
And Biff chose to stay with you?
Yep.
Good for him.
Darned if I know why I'm telling you all this, Nancy. Something I never talk about. Something I've buried layers deep.
But it is good to talk about things sometimes.
Well, it's good to talk to you. Hey, look here, why have you been so nice to me? Was it because you knew instinctively that I was lonesome?
Perhaps. Perhaps another reason.
What reason?
Perhaps because I was lonesome, too.
As they pause at the curb for a traffic light, watching the crowds hurrying homeward, Nancy and Curt are aware of the same unvoiced thought. How lonely a big city can be when there's no one to talk to, no one to listen. How strange and wonderful that one person out of the hurrying crowds can suddenly change the face of the city and bring into one's life a feeling of comfort and reassurance. And now a message from our sponsor. Tomorrow is an important day in the lives of Curt Bradley and Nancy Wayne, and it will link their lives closer to the Youngs. Be sure to join us on Pepper Young's Family. John Scott speaking. Pepper Young's Family is a modern drama production.